Ahum, and thank you for joining me today. Today, as we continue to move forward as frontiers men and women um, through our shamanic reality, we come to a point where now we speak about neuroscience and shamanism. Let me get comfortable. You can check the references here in Neuroscience Graduate Program, the University of Michigan, even the Department of Anesthesiology in the University of Michigan, and also the Center for Consciousness Science in the University of Michigan. There is the Division of Translational Epidemiology in New York State Psychiatric Institute. There is the Graduate Center, City University of New York, and the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy in Montreal, Canada. And there's also information from the Chronic Pain and Fatigue Research Center from the Department of Anesthesiology in the University of Michigan. So, folks, these are articles, these are studies that are getting made, are getting notoriety, and giving us a lot of information that we really need to sit down and listen to and understand more. Are we able to do that? Yes. Yes, we can. No, we do not have a limited brain. If we continue to believe that, then we will continue to have that because that is an intention. And of course, it gets manifested. Think about that for a little bit. So I want you to expand your brain as I give you my notes on what it is that I read and I understood from this literature. Now, everybody knows the shamans have been known for their psychedelics because that is where they reach, well, some reach altered states of consciousness. However, when submitted for EEGs, there are some shamans that reach the state of consciousness that don't necessarily use any psychedelics. Again, if we are conditioned to believe that we have to use psychedelics, you know that you are going to just put a limit in your mind because this is the primal condition that you've been given about having to use psychedelics to reach an altered state of consciousness during your shamanic work. Is there anything wrong with it? No. If this is your preference, by all means, do what it is that you were taught to do. Does it mean that there is another way? Absolutely. There's always another way for everything and everyone, but you need to really believe that you can do it. And you have to then give yourself permission to actually get that altered state without having to use that. What is it that we used instead? How did these shamans get to an altered state of consciousness? Well, they got EEGs. They got a bunch of shamans. They got a whole bunch of, everybody knows that when we do studies, we have these things called controls, right? Well, what does the electroencephalogram, for those of you that don't really know this, those are little dots and wires that they put all over you on your head to see, what's happening with the brain. All right. So they've got this whole bunch of shamans, and then they recorded what their brains did while they were resting, while they were drumming. Oh, they put classical music for them to listen to. And then, the typical stuff that the study does. What is it that they were looking for? Well, they were looking at the neural state of the shamanic trance, right? So when shamans go into trance, whether you're an earth shaman, you're a cosmic shaman, it doesn't matter. You still go into trance so that you can get to that altered state of consciousness, and then you can journey. Whatever realm it is that you're going through, that is what happens. You actually go into trance. So why did they do this? Why pick an EEG? Well, the EEG is going to send little data, right? And every time there is change in the control, right? They're going to measure the power, the signal diversity, the connectivity, and they're going to assess with a thing called measurements, right? They use measurements to assess what it is that they're looking at. And then those assessments, they all have values, which they're going to say, well, this happened this, and this is why, and this happened this, and this is why, because they have those parameters that they're looking at. This is what we expect. You guys remember when you had science, your kids had science projects, right? So you have your hypotheses, right? And then you carry out your controls, and then you carry out your science experiment, and then you come up with a scientific paper that tells you what worked and what didn't and how. That's all your science fair is really about. So this is a science fair, but in a more controlled environment with real um, real tools, scientific tools, right? So they're getting spiritual people, bringing them into the scientific world, and they're seeing with their eyes wide open that this stuff is really happening, right? Now they got healthy people, right, that could go under the influence of psychedelics, right? And then they got those that didn't need psychedelics but were able to reach that altered state of consciousness. And then they compared the scores of those measurements to the ones to each other, the ones with the psychedelic use and the ones without, right? What they found, one of the things that they found, is that there was an increase in the gamma power during drumming. And that directly correlated with basic visual alterations. Not only that, but then they also were able to measure and document that these shamans, they had a decreased amount, or a decreased low alpha, but increased low beta connectivity during drumming and classical music, right? So they saw that this happened, and it decreased neural signal diversity in the actual gamma band of the measurement during drumming. And of course, that directly correlates with insightfulness. Insightfulness. So what they got, and further, well, this doesn't end. So in their measurements, they found that critically in practitioners was increased during drumming in the low and high beta and gamma bands, with increases of low beta band correlating with complex imagery and elementary visual alteration, which suggests that psychedelic drug-induced and non-pharmacological alterations in consciousness, non-pharmacologic alterations in consciousness actually have an overlapping phenomenal trait. But it doesn't end there. These are all distinct states of consciousness. Why? Why? Why would this happen? Why would they be able to measure this? Because we do have unique brain-related changes that do happen during shamanic trance. And this kind of tells us that previous investigations right now, they don't correlate with these new findings. And what could that mean? No, it doesn't mean that somebody doctored it. What it means is we're still evolving and changes happen. And just like science evolves, so do we. So do shamans. So do spiritualists. Okay? So while studies that we've been working with that have been published, and I don't know about you guys, but I read them all. It takes me a while, but I read them all. And especially when it comes to shamanism and neuroscience, right? The neuroscience of consciousness, right? We have come to a point where the use of psychedelics, right, to induce altered states of consciousness, does do something to brain receptors. This is what they got it, and they're like, oh yeah, this can happen. Oh yeah, duh, right? Duh. However, when they did neuroimaging studies to investigate the brain function or the brain activity in shamanic practitioners during shamanic trance, okay, and then they added the MRI, they did the EEGs, they did all the stuff, right? Okay. They did find a little hub of activity in key regions of the brain, right? But this was during the shamanic state, whether they were in psychedelic trance or non-psychedelic trance. Okay. So what does this all mean? Right? Well, let's put it into hertz, because we as shamans and we as spiritualists, we use frequencies, right? Here's where you're going to see the difference, how we see things and how the scientific people see it. While they did an EEG, right, on those particular regions during trance, that they found that they had an increased hub of activity, right? And of course, and these, I do have to mention, these were in default mode. and control-related networks during the shamanic state. What they saw that during the EEG, during the shamanic state of consciousness, there was an increase in the lower 13 to 20 hertz, an increase in the lower 13 to 20 hertz and the higher 21 to 50 hertz beta activity. Now, the anterior posterior shift in power during the transition from normal to trance state, this is what happened. All right. All they really wanted to know was how this happened, what happens to the brain, and does that really exist, a shamanic state of consciousness? Well, hell yeah, it does, right? Now, what there were what they call there is what they call a neurobiological metrics, right? With the subjective experiences of the state. Well, guess what? These past studies in the further back, they never had that. They never had that control. They never looked for that. They never correlated, because it doesn't correlate, right, with these metrics that have just been found. And what that does is just doesn't give you a totally clear picture, right? But the value in these studies is that the unique altered state of consciousness offers an incredible insight into the neurobiology of consciousness. And that just brings a whole new world into our shamanic practices. Totally. And while these studies continue to happen, we want to make sure that you understand the value of your shamanic journey. These people were asked to do certain things, shamanic healing, listen to classical music, and all those beautiful things. And then they took all this information, they put it all together, and they came up with the results, which is incredible, that even during the overlap of the shamanic state of consciousness and the psychedelic experience, they thought that it was going to be hard for them to show how the brain worked in each one of them. And they were able to actually take measurement. They were able to correlate visual alterations. They were able to see the functional connectivity of the low alpha and beta bands during drumming. They were able to measure all this stuff. And then yet, there's still more that needs to happen, because now we have to get what we already know that the shaman can achieve. Now we have to bring in the study of how the shaman is able to channel that healing and bring it into a physical body, right? Now, this is one of the largest comprehensive neuroimaging study of shamanic practitioners to date. So, what is it that they did? Well, they measured the shamanic state of consciousness. They used a high density EEG. It's not the one you get anywhere, in the doctor's office. This is a calibrated piece of machinery that you can bet your bottom dollar that this is very effective. And then they got a well-validated assessment for altered states of consciousness on a scale that they have. And then they revealed the shamanic practitioners to be significantly different from controls in a majority of the domains during drumming based on their, scales that they have. These differences, and this I'm getting from the frontiers of human neuroscience. They say that they revealed shamanic practitioners to be significantly different from controls in a majority of the scale domains during drumming. These differences were similar or greater in magnitude than those reported by individuals under the influence of ketamine, psilocybin, and MDMA. In addition to the main effects of the group on a variety of EEG measures, post hoc exploratory analysis revealed that shamanic practitioners have increased absolute gamma power during drumming, which positively correlates with a degree of elementary visual alterations. Hello? Additionally, practitioners had decreased low alpha and increased low beta connectivity during drumming and classical music. And not only that, signal diversity in the gamma band was decreased in shamanic practitioners during drumming, which negatively correlated with feelings of insightfulness. Finally, PCF was increased in the low beta, high beta, gamma bands during drumming, which increases the low beta band positively, correlating with complex imagery and elementary visual alterations. So what do these findings mean? Well, that means that during our trance rituals and ceremonies, shamans entered an altered state of consciousness that is accompanied by changes in a variety of measurements that they did with the electroencephalogram, and that directly correlates with self-reported changes in the experience itself. So what did they bring out of that? Well, differences in the gamma power, the gamma complexity, and low beta PCF were exclusive to shamanic drumming and correlated with terms of the OAV scale, which is the scale that they used. What does that mean, Mary? Well, it likely represents changes in the brain activity specific to the shamanic state of consciousness. And this all represents trait-related changes in shamanic practitioners. So it doesn't matter that war that people have. It doesn't matter whether you are in a psychedelic induced state of consciousness or not. Either one has to do with their upbringing, with what it is that they've learned, what it is that how it is that they go into trance. There are people that go into trance just by going into trance. They know how to get there. They know how to make those changes in their brain. The thing here is, yes, there are changes happening in brains, shamanic brains, when this happens. And yes, the trance is real. Oh my God. Doesn't that sound funny? The trance is real. Go ahead and take this information, run with it, do your own research. Because if consciously, whether with psychedelics or not, we are able to go into trance, we are able to get to the place that we're supposed to get to in our consciousness, through our consciousness. What does that mean? It means it's real. That's all. I needed to make it funny. It was just too much scientific jargon, but I needed to let you guys know, because everybody's talking about, oh, the neuro shaman, oh, this, oh, now this is the other shaman, and this is the other shaman. We're all shamans. You just need to understand that you picked a path. What path are you in now? Finish that path. But we can all enter a state of consciousness, an altered state of consciousness, naturally, because we as shamans, we learn to do that, right? The earth shamans. But in the galactic shamanism, what happens? We go into the altered state of consciousness, but we move further. We get to a different point. We are able to alter our neurons and create these connections that we are able then to get to that type of medicine, that type of wisdom, that type of education that we are done with here. But we may be done with it here as we wait for the earth and for this reality to evolve once again. So we're learning how to deal with the new evolution that's coming from out there. And that's out there and here, because there is coherence. So once we're there, once that galactic shaman actually reaches that altered state, it doesn't stop there. It moves even further. Because now we are non-body. So the medicine that we get will be different, but will work for all. Because we still come back to this body. But we come with interesting medicine as we move forward. That's why the cosmic shaman is now coming out. This is why now the neuro shaman is now coming out, because there is evidence that our brains go through a change in the physical body, even though we are in an altered state of consciousness and we're reaching something else. We are still in the body, the vessel. So yes, it does happen. Yes, you must practice every single day. However you want to get there, just get there. Thank you. I hope you have a beautiful day.